Ooh, most broken ability removed for every WoW class. That actually sounds really fun, doesn't it? That's a fun thing to think about. Let's do that. That sounds like a banger. All right. Let's try to even name all the classes in this game. Paladin. Okay. That was only missed DHDK. So, let's start thinking of all the most broken abilities removed from these classes. Paladin. So Ashen Hollow's the most recent one of this, but I wonder if there's like some old shit you could argue. And also this guy's a big classic Andy, so there's a he'll probably Divine Intervention. So what was Divine Intervention exactly? What did that do? What did Divine Intervention do? Yeah, wait, what was the thing? What was the like aura of sacrifice in Legion? That shit was crazy too. Divine Intervention was to kill yourself to save a guy. Ashen Hollow sounds stronger than that. Reckoning was sick. Can you tell me, like, what is Reckoning? I think the answer is probably Ashen Hollow, bro. Like, it was, like, untunably broken until it got removed. It was so insane. Like, basically, I mean, actually, I don't know. Ashen Hollow was pretty well balanced in the way that if you're going to make a 4-minute CD, it has to be, like, twice as good as a 2-minute CD, you know? And most 3 and 4 minutes don't actually follow that line of thinking. They're just not good enough to be that long. So Ashen Hollow was just like good enough, but it was on a 4-minute CD, which is super OP. But the thing is like this game is like, especially in Mythic Plus, is like so defined by, like you can deal with the overall power of something. Like the overall power is everything, and you would just build your entire strat around the 4-minute CD. I'm gonna just, let's not spend too much time on this because I gotta eat my food. Ashen Hollow for this. Druid, it's Symbiosis. I don't even think it's close. Evoker, they haven't really removed, this is like too early. I'm gonna move Evoker to like the bottom of the list because like I don't even know if there's a good answer for that. Mage. Warlock is definitely KJ's Cunning. Or maybe, or Demo Meta. Prismatic Crystal? Prismatic Crystal was, like, pretty well-balanced, except for a specific interaction with a trinket in one raid. I don't know. I'm not sure if anything sticks out to me there. What about Warrior? Rogue is probably Smoke Bomb in PvE, right? They had a 20% DR for the entire raid. It's pretty OP. Warrior is Glad Stance? Huh? Dude, when Glad... is this a PvP thing? Or are you guys talking about, like, PvP? Because, like, in PvE, Glad Stance was, like, super whatever. Oh, maybe it was Crit Banner, Skull Banner. But Skull Banner was also, like, not that good. I don't have a good answer for Warrior. Shaman? Dude, probably Ancestral Guidance. And they just removed it. Oh, Mop Alter Time for Mage. I don't know if that counts because they still have Alter Time. It's just different. Old Alter Time. I'll put that. I'll put that, though. Because that is a good point. But I think it's probably not going to get picked by him. But, like, you know, we can have a better answer. Hunter is Aspect of the Fox. I don't... Let's think more. Okay, Aspect of the Fox is good, but it's a little overrated. Little overrated. Like, it was specifically insane for, like, one boss. Like, Aspect of the Fox existed for 2 raids, High Mall and Black Ark Foundry. And it was only, like, you only brought a bunch of hunters to stack Aspect of the Fox on one boss. I mean, I don't know, the answer might just be Aspect of the Fox. Pretty strong, but I will just say a massively overrated spell. Priest. Oh, I'm not. It's not even close. Probably the most OP thing on this list. Monk. I'm pretty sure the answer is Uplift. Maybe Chi Explosion? I don't know about Monk. I need to think about that more. DH? Probably Momentum / Inertia. It's Nemesis, no question. Such a recent class. Oh, you know what it might be, actually? I think you're right. I think it was Double Sigils. This is not technically an answer because this is not an ability. It's a talent that I think still exists, just got changed. But I'm pretty sure it is whatever the fuck gave them 2 stacks of every sigil. Like, that was fucking broken. Like, if that wasn't changed, you would have just played DH in every Mythic Plus season ever. It's probably that. DK. DK is the res as ghoul when you died. Was that even that OP? Like, the problem is, like, okay, we're gonna pick something from Wrath, because, like, DK was just, like, super OP in Wrath. But like the rezzing someone as a ghoul or whatever, I don't even think it was OP. It was just cool, at least in PvE. Oh, it's Dark Sim. It's Dark Sim. This literally completely broke raid bosses. It was so OP when it worked. I'm going with Dark Sim. That shit's screwed. That shit was actually so broken. Probably really good in PvP too. Or maybe Nathria AMZ, low key, 2-minute cooldown, 20% DR, one of the best raid CDs of all time. Maybe the wait, is 2-minute 20% DR actually just the best raid CD of all time? Like the only thing you can compare to it is like barrier, 25% barrier, but that's 3-minute, so 2-minute just wins out. Aura Mastery from Paladins before it was nerfed, which I think at its best was a 15% DR, which you didn't have to be stacked for, but it was a 3-minute CD. Spirit Link is the best raid cooldown in the game at extremely niche and specific mechanics that are very rare. And then outside of that, it's just pretty mid. I think it might be, I think Nathria AMZ might have been the actual best raid CD. A little fight dependent, but okay. And then Evoker. I mean, Evoker is just so recent. Like, is there anything that Evokers have had that was super OP that is completely gone? Closest clutch mates, Og, guys. Og still exists. Maybe the scales actually. Maybe the thing that when you Obsidian scaled it gave health to your party. Pretty sure your HP scale thing also exists. Dude, I just have no answer for Og. It's not fun. Okay, Warrior and Monk are the two that we care about here. Warrior's probably Skull Banner. I don't actually know. I think Skull Banner is like really overrated. I don't think Skull Banner was that strong. Like even when Skull Banner existed, you didn't stack Warriors for that reason. I mean, maybe just like old Rallying Cry is a decent answer, right? Because like there were points in this game where Rallying Cry was close to a 30% HP increase, which is like just so, and now it's insanely terrible. It's so bad. Maybe, but that's like not, I don't know. Old Execute, OG Rec, no. Okay, what about Monk? We need to just watch the video. Paladin is wrong. Yeah, I took a guess with Ashen Hallow. Like I think Divine Intervention is like definitely not better than Ashen. Do you have another suggestion for Paladin specifically? Like maybe the Blood, the like Aura of Sacrifice, or Warlock's old Fire and Brimstone with old passive Manoroth's Fury was insane. It was, but I feel like the fact that Warlocks are so immobile right now and they used to have an ability that let them permanently cast while moving, I think that is probably the most impactful best ability that they've ever lost. That would be my guess. Touch of Death from Legion. Old Touch of Death. I mean, it wasn't even... No, I don't think so. Monk could be Nimble Brew. Maybe... I'm just going to go with Uplift. I think the answer... I'm pretty sure the most broken version of Monk ever, including this tier and Sanctum Farm, is actually Jab Jab Uplift Monk from Miss Pandaria. Alright, we're slamming it. Alright, let's slam it. Alright, video time. Just before we get into the rest of the video, a quick word from today's sponsor. If you guys have ever watched my stream, you've probably noticed my dogs. Reptar. Talk to him, buddy. Hey. Reptar. It takes a lot to keep them fed. That's why I'm really excited to partner with today's sponsor, Farmer's Dog. The Farmer's Dog has been keeping my dogs fed with fresh food. The food is made from whole meats and veggies, gently cooked to retain all the nutrients, and delivered right to my door. What I really love is how easy it is to manage. Personalized meals, pre-portioned packs, and even 24/7 customer support if I ever have any questions. I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I've been using Farmer's Dog for years. Long before they offered me this, I was actually like begging for them to be like, this just makes so much sense. It just shouldn't be complicated to feed your dogs something healthy and freshly made food. Get 50% off of your first box of freshly made healthy dog food by using my link in the description. Plus, you'll get free shipping and 24/7 customer support. Thank you to Farmer's Dog for sponsoring the video. Let's get back into it. All right, I'll see you guys later.
Throughout World of Warcraft's many expansions, we've seen class abilities come and go. Some of them were seen as relics of the past, which were clunky to play with or just not very interactive, and others were the cornerstone of how certain specs have worked for many years. And with these changes now and again, sometimes Blizzard introduces spells or abilities to WoW which were perhaps just a little bit too good. Those abilities that can one-shot others in PvP, top DPS without trying, or make you feel more mobile than a mounted
I'm just gonna say this now.
Today I want to wanted to cover
If
one
he
ability
ever
per
mentions
class that was
PvP,
either removed from the game
we're just gonna get it
entirely
wrong, and
or
that's okay.
massively nerfed
That is,
after players found out
we
just
accept
how
this outcome.
overpowered it was in the game. This can be any form of ability, talent, spell, artifact trait, or whatever else that your class is.
Ooh, did we miss by not really considering artifact weapons? The thing is the really good artifact weapons mostly got baked in as talents, but in a lot of times they weren't as I don't know. No, I don't think corruption would matter. I don't know, fuck it.
Ever possessed at any point in WoW's 20+ year history. So with that said, this is the most overpowered removed ability from each of WoW's classes. I think today we'll start off with the Cloth Wearers and with the Priest. And to be fair, they
It's
are
Surrender
a
to
pretty
Madness.
easy
It's
starting
yeah,
point.
it's
because
Surrender to
this
Madness.
class
It's not
specifically
close.
had
It's not
arguably
close.
one of the best DPS cooldowns
Yep.
that was ever introduced
This
to the
is
game.
one that, like, there's no fucking way it's not Surrender. There's no way.
It was first added in Legion, and it was called Surrender to Madness. So in Legion, Shadow Priest specifically got a pretty big overhaul to their gameplay style, where usually it was just about keeping dots up and using stuff off of cooldown. Now instead they had a
Like,
brand new
obviously this was so strong for people who were good at it, but also it had a secondary entertainment value where, like, if you were watching people that weren't as good try to play Surrender, you just saw some crazy shit.
source to play with called Insanity. Insanity would be generated through abilities and would drain after a priest had activated their Void form. Whilst in this Void form you would get some different abilities and would gain a damage buff and an ever stacking haste buff. So the general idea was pull your resources, activate Void form, and then try and stay in this form for as long as possible to make the most of the damage buffs it provided. And with your regular gameplay, depending on boss fights and how much you need to move, you'd be somewhere between a 30 to 45 second Void form duration. It was definitely a powerful ability, but it was fair as well. And that is where Surrender to Madness steps in and just completely breaks the class. Surrender to Madness instantly activated Void form and made it so all spells could be cast whilst
okay, we weren't talking about
moving.
Surrender.
On top of that, in its first version, you would generate 200% bonus Insanity from abilities whilst in Void form. There is a catch though, if your Insanity ever dropped to 0 and you exited Void form, you just straight up died. You couldn't even be rezzed either. This was the ultimate risk versus reward DPS cooldown, and I don't know if anything quite as cool has been put in the game since. The thing is, in its
Facts.
first version,
It is
Surrender to
insanely
Madness
cool.
was just
But the thing is like, this isn't something you'd want to put on every class. It's cool this at once existed in the game. I think it also makes sense that it doesn't anymore. Because it's simply unbalanceable.
way overtuned. The combination of being able to cast whilst moving, whilst generating all that bonus Insanity, meant that priests were able to keep in Void form more or less indefinitely as long as they had something to hit all of the time. And so the first raid tier of Legion opens, the Emerald Nightmare, and it becomes immediately apparent that this new class can have more or less 100% uptime on a bunch of raid bosses, leading to Shadow Priest absolutely crushing.
It is crazy that when you died in Surrender to Madness on Xavius, that it didn't kill you and it just procced the fight mechanic where you didn't die. Crazy.
DPS meters, and clearly being the best DPS in the game. Of course though, Blizzard stepped in with a nerf to Surrender to Madness, many times over might I add. By patch 7.15, the Insanity gain from this talent was halved, down from 200% to 100%, and Void form itself was targeted with nerfs to its Insanity drain rate 3 times as well throughout Legion. Blizzard did have a few attempts at rebalancing Surrender to Madness in later expansions, but ultimately it was removed as we know it in Dragonflight. But for me, this is definitely the most overpowered ability that priests have ever had, which was unfortunately removed. Before we go on, a quick shout out.
I think it had to be removed. I think it's great that it happened. One of those things like, don't be sad it's gone, be glad you were there. I think this, like, Surrender existing in its OP state would be the most complained about thing of all time if it continued to exist in the game. And I don't know, I'd be a fan of like playing a class like that, but I don't know, it's really hard for something like that to exist.
Next we have the Mage, and for Mage they are a class that have had so many wacky abilities over the years.
So our guess is Old Alter Time here, but I'm really guessing he's not going to pick that. I think a common wrong answer would be Prismatic Crystal, because that's the only time it was really OP was because of something else being a trinket. Maybe it's old Ignite.
From Frostjaw as a combined 8-second root and silence on a low cooldown. Have fun playing versus that one in PvP healers, or Prismatic Crystal in Warlords of Draenor, which enabled them to do crazy high burst DPS as Arcane, and defeat bosses, which were current content in literally seconds if you stacked enough mages. But for Mage, what
Yeah, that wasn't, like, that isn't because of Prismatic Crystal, though. It's because of a combination of a lot of things. I think it's a bad take.
I want to pick is something which, although was removed in future
but he didn't pick it. What did he pick?
Is still a talent in vanilla.
Oh!
Wow. And that is the seemingly innocent, improved Blizzard. I mean, it's a talent named after the game studio. You know it's got to be overpowered, right? So I've said in plenty of videos now that the Death Knight wasn't really World of Warcraft's first hero class when it came to just how overpowered they were. It all began with a Mage in vanilla.
The fuck out
During this first version of WoW, when all classes were most certainly not made equal, they had a toolkit which was just several expansions ahead of others, and they excelled more than anyone else to an enormous degree in dealing AoE damage. Where other classes might have an ability which can hit a few targets such as cleave or multi-shot, or have an AoE on a long cooldown which was often just bad such as hurricane or volley, mages had, well, they had everything. Arcane Explosion, Cone of Cold, Flame Strike, and Blizzard. Mages absolutely destroyed every other class on AoE, and it was just not close. And during vanilla, there was no cap on AoE damage. During TBC and Wrath, Blizzard actually began to tone down AoE damage by introducing a cap, where a single ability couldn't do more than a certain amount of total damage. But in vanilla, you deal full damage whether you're hitting one mob or 1,000 mobs. And this is where the talent improved Blizzard starts to come in. At max rank, it would slow enemies by 65% for 1.5 seconds, but you would also always be taking the permafrost talent too, which improved the value of your slows by 10% and their duration importantly by 3 seconds. So any enemy that could be slowed by improved Blizzard was slowed by 75% for 4.5 seconds. And in vanilla, well, Blizzard didn't always make certain mobs such as elite or even in some cases dungeon mobs immune to slowing effects. So you combine the Mage's ability to hit.
Max, what was your pick for mages? Mine was old Altar Time. So what Altar Time used to do is it reset literally every single one of your cooldowns. So not only would it like heal you if you wanted to use it like that, but you would use it right after you used Icy Veins or whatever, and you would just get all of your buttons back. Including like Ice Block and shit. Which is like, imagine that in today's day and age. Imagine if you could like Ice Block or immune something or Ice Cold, and then 30 seconds later you're alter timing and doing it all again, including your DPS cooldowns. That's pretty sick. Or is there... Oh, man. It also removed the Bloodlust debuff if you timed it right? Oh, shit. I don't know, man.
It's an infinite number of enemies to be able to permanently apply.
I mean, like, okay, like, obviously, they're not going to do something about rating. I'm already saying, like, if they're doing any PvP thing, there's probably, like, I'm aware, there's probably an answer to a lot of this that is PvP-centric. That is right. Like, the most OP ability that's ever existed, I may have never even heard its name, and it's specifically a PvP reason, and I'm, like, okay with that. I think, like, questing out in the world... And if that's specifically... I mean, I don't think this is a terrible answer. I'm just like, you know, it's just not... I guess it's just not fun for me because I didn't play in Classic.
Massive movement, speed slow, so they never got hit. And just their good defensive tools from the Frost Tree, such as Ice Barrier, Cold Snap, and Ice Block. And you end up with vanilla Mage AoE farming, where the sky is very much the limit. Mage's toolkit allow them to be the fastest leveler in the game through...
Oh yeah, Alter Time would also snapshot your buffs. You're exactly right. So, like, you would have every single buff up. Used to be, like, Engineer, you had Synapse Springs, you'd have your pot, you would have Bloodlust, and then like you would alter time, and then at the end of all those things dropping, you would just get them all back again. So your lust was just 10 seconds longer too.
AoE farming in the open world. It allows them to boost themselves in dungeons such as Zul'Farrak, or of course even boost others in raids like Zul'Gurub. Mages can, no exaggeration, pull 500 mobs in Maradon at the same time and gradually AoE them down. In fact, recently there's even been talk of mages soloing Lower Blackrock Spire, which is a new discovery on Anniversary Realms as far as I'm aware. Eventually though, Blizzard started to introduce AoE caps, which wasn't as bad as it sounds, but more importantly, importantly, they just started making stuff in dungeons immune to slowing effects. Improved Blizzard is the talent though that really brought everything together to allow the Mage to pull off these crazy things in vanilla, and it truly set them apart from other classes. And for what it's worth, Mages could still AoE well in TBC, and I remember people boosting or leveling in the likes of Slave Pens, so this wasn't completely dead by the expansion. But this tactic and Mage's exclusive access to the best AoE really did start to fall off heavily by Wrath of the Lich King and beyond. For Warlock, they are another class with plenty of abilities in...
Bro, KJ's cunning or I sleep. Okay, I also put in parentheses, so I'm cheating and picking a second thing. It could be also demo meta, because that was so insane. But, like, just think about how it would impact them now. Imagine Warlocks could infinitely cast while moving right now. Like, if you play Warlock, you're like, that would be the most insane thing ever. I don't know. I think
intention here, but for them I want to go with a talent which we will soon have access to in the Pandaria Classic. However, we're going to get a nerfed version of it, and that is Kill Jaden's Cunning. So the one we should
I think this is true.
Expect to get is one where Malefic Grasp,
well, I mean, no shit, because I like picked it and I'm happy I'm right.
Shadow Bolt and Incinerate are all castable whilst moving. These are the filler spells for the 3 Warlock specs, and it's still a great talent.
It's still insane though,
because who doesn't love casting while moving?
The thing is like, yeah, but the thing is you have to cast filler spells in your rotation, so that's a thing. You were just able, you infinitely increase your mobility.
However, this talent used to be quite different. So during Mr. Pandaria's release in patch 5.04, it was a 1-minute cooldown ability, which when activated allowed all spells to be cast whilst moving for 6 seconds. However, it also had a passive.
Yeah, the passive was what the thing was.
Which meant if you cast spells without the cooldown active, it would slow your cast speed by 50% and movement speed by 10%, both of these stacking 2 times. So the upside was 6 seconds of casting while moving every 1 minute, and the downside was up to a 100% casting and 20% movement speed slow if accidentally used otherwise. I'm not gonna lie, this sounds pretty bad in its first version. However, then the first major content patch rolled around in 5.1 and straight up removed the cast time penalty from Kill Jaden's Cunning, but increased the movement speed slow to cap out from 30% up from 20%. So you still had the active portion of the talent with the free movement.
I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit.
Seconds, but otherwise you could cast any. For them, I picked a talent that 5.4 changed it to what you should expect to get in 0.4 in his Rogue, and for them I picked one of the most powerful talents WoW has ever seen. Next up is Rogue, and for them I picked a talent.
Okay, so it sounds like you're picking a talent, and I don't remember if Smoke Bomb was a talent, but my pick is Smoke Bomb. But if he's doing talent, yeah, he might pick Burst of Speed. Okay, I would need to be convinced on Burst of Speed, because like a raid-wide 20% DR is so fucking insane. Oh, it could be Old Feint. Yeah, Old Feint was super crazy too. Yeah, but the thing is like, how many times is turning into a NASCAR race or whatever in like Raid or Mythic Plus like actually relevant? Like there was one boss, Garrosh, where it was like really utilized, but like I don't know. I feel like basically an offensive spell just has to be, I don't know.
That we will be seeing during
it broke PvP. Okay, maybe this is just a PvP answer, and I just take the L on the fact that it's PvP.
The Pandaria, and you will be getting it at its best possible version. Usually things on final patches have undergone 1 or 2 nerfs after starting off being too good, but in this case, more or less every single major content patch in Mr. Pandaria buffed this ability until we end up with what we'll have today. And here I'm talking about Burst of Speed. During Mr. Pandaria, this is an ability with no cooldown.
Wow, it just cost energy. That's so sick.
Movement
That's
speed
so
by
insane.
70% for 4 seconds and removes all movement speed slowing effects. So between the energy cost and the uptime, this ability can always be active for a small investment of your energy for a really powerful effect.
15 energy back then was not a small investment, by the way, but it's like if you were spamming this, your damage will go down like crazy in like PvE. I think this is a PvP take.
Looking back through the older patch notes, the first version of this seemed to cost 60 energy, didn't remove slowing effects, and it broke stealth. I guess Blizzard was seriously overestimating how good a mini on-demand sprint was going to be. Burst of Speed though is just a great overall tool for the rogue, whatever area of content you enjoy most. For leveling, it's going to be faster than mounting up between short distances. For PvP, it removes roots and gives you a nice speed boost. For PvE, it's a small energy investment to cover a lot of ground fast, fast. And for farming old content, you can zoom through
Oh,
dungeons
yeah.
with a permanent 70% movement speed buff. This talent was also nerfed
that's
twice
sick.
in Warlords of Draenor to increase its energy cost to 30, as well as to make it have a 3-second cooldown before it was outright removed in Legion. So back in the day, you'd have had this talent in this state for most of the final patch of Mists of Pandaria, which was still a very long time by the way, but in Mock Classic you'll have this from day one, so rogues, enjoy. We're staying in the Mists of Pandaria expansion for the next ability on this list with an absolutely iconic Druid ability that only existed for this.
Yep. Okay, it's going to be Symbiosis. The question is Symbiosis actually the most OP thing on this list? Like, okay, let me show you what it did. Symbiosis, just see if it shows up. Okay, wow. Probably have to type wow instead of the literal definition of it. Here's what it did. So, depending on... Or, no, this is what the Druid would get. So the Druid could give, like, Shadow Priest Tranquility. It could give Rogue's Taunt, which you could use evasion on. It gave Shaman specs, you know, like Solar Beam. I remember the Warlock rejuve was really bad. It gave Warriors, like, a Stampeding Roar, right? So, like, you can think in Raid, that's, like, super insane. It gave tanks an extra cooldown. It gave... Blood DK's got Might of Ursoc. Brewmaster got Survival Instincts, right? So, like, multiple tanks are just gaining, like, crazy value. You got, like, actual... this was their active mitigation at the time, Savage Defense, but it would just be a 1-minute CD 30%. But look at what you could get by giving it to people. Feral Druid could get Soul Swap for their dots, super broken. Feral Druid could get literally Divine Shield, just the button, no, not a nerf version, just literally a fucking immunity. You could if you were a Resto Druid, you could get Ice Block or Deterrence or like an actual personal based on the scenario. Guardian could gain a ton of defensive things. Fear Ward was actually really broken on a couple of bosses, being able to get Fear Ward. Balanced Druids could get AMS, Unending Resolve, Hodge. It's like being able to give yourself an immunity, just in general, would probably be the answer to this, and it could be so much more than that too.
Expansion. I am of course talking here about Symbiosis. The idea behind this spell.
Also another thing where I'm like, be glad, don't be sad that it's gone, be glad that you were here kind of thing. This is another spell that absolutely could not have continued to exist without just insane nerfs to where it wouldn't even be the reason it was cool. It was so OP.
Is pretty simple. So the Druid will cast Symbiosis on another class. The Druid gains an ability from that class based upon the casting Druid spec.
Can you imagine how this would be exploited in like the Race to World First? You would just do, you would, the solution to so many problems you come across would be some kind of use of Symbiosis.
And the class they have casted Symbiosis on gains a Druid ability, which can depend on their spec, but some classes get the same ability for all 3 specs. Just for an example, if you're a Resto Druid and you Symbiosis as Shadow Priest, the Druid gets a Leap of Faith and the Priest gets Tranquility. If you're a Feral Druid and you put Symbiosis on a Prot Pala, the Druid will get Divine Shield and the Paladin gets Bark Skin. And if you Symbiosis any Hunter as a Balanced Druid, the Druid will get Misdirection, and any Hunter specs will get Dash. Just keep in mind what spec you target with Symbiosis doesn't matter, it's just the ability granted will change based upon your own spec. So of course this opened up a massive amount of different combinations which can be applied to so many different scenarios in all areas of the game. In PvP specifically, you really had to learn the Symbiosis combinations. A Feral Druid could just use Dispersion out of nowhere, and you might not have expected that extra defensive when you're going all in. In PvE it opened up a bunch of powerful abilities which could be shared too, depending on the requirements of the fight. Maybe a single player needed a defensive, or the raid needed more healing, perhaps more mobility would be good. Or you could even misdirect from a Druid Starfall. There were so many possibilities.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip ahead.
Try, you'll be able to experience Symbiosis once again. Next up on the leather wearers is the Monk, and funnily enough
the Monk really confused me. We just had to pick something. Like, basically the most OP any spec of Monk ever was, at least that included a major removed ability, was Mistweaver and Mop with Uplift. But I think the answer to this could be a lot of things. Most things that were super broken are still in the game. This Monk doesn't have a lot of remove spells.
It's another ability from Mr. Pandaria. I swear I'm not picking him up on purpose here, but when people think back to it and say classes were fun back then, that kind of happened for a reason. There was just a lot of overpowered stuff. Anyways, the choice for me here is a Brewmaster Monk ability, Dizzying Haze. This ability...
I mean, now that I'm looking at the dungeon journal, the answer is probably guard. Like, guard was fucking OP. Was actually OP. Dude, this is a
20 energy, had a 40-yard range, applied a 50% slow for 15 seconds, and would hit all enemies within an 8-yard radius, dealing high threat. In Mr. Pandaria as well, it also gave enemies essentially a 3% chance to punch themselves in the face instead of you. So this ability might not sound as
I mean, you used to use this, okay, like kind of similar to Burst of Speed Pick. There were some PvE situations where Dizzying Haze and you just throwing your keg or whatever would just allow you to infinitely kite things forever, which was OP, and I think it was the only class in the game that could do that, and this enabled that. So in that way, it's a good thing. I don't know. I just think like literally something else on this actual spell page guard. Also avert harm. Avert harm. Brewmaster monks used to be able to basically stagger a certain percentage of all the raid damage, which is like super insane. And then they would just take all of the stagger. It was also super fun because, well, if you didn't know exactly how to use it, you would just instantly die.
It's the biggest deal compared to some of the other
it could
ones we've
instantly
already seen
fucking kill
here.
you.
But this is a spammable ranged AoE threat generator that applies a 50% slow. Has any other tank in WoW ever had something like this? Maybe they have, but
yeah, let's just show a POV, by the way, where this ability isn't OP at all and is doing nothing.
Not that I can think of, and that's probably for a good
Let's
reason.
just show this
During
clip.
Mr. Pandaria and beyond, Blizzard started working on making dungeons a bit more competitive too through challenge modes. Imagine this ability in Modern Mythic Plus with
Max, I got paid twice for splits, someone said in YouTube chat. Bro, why are you telling me that? You're being a narc on yourself right now. Just take the extra gold, big dog. You won.
its capabilities of pulling so many mobs whilst having a built-in way to kite at the same time. It was also amazing just for general open world use or farming old content, and since Wrath of the Lich King, even hitting a mob with a non-damaging attack would grant
then he
you
told
a
me to
tag
blow
on
up.
it.
Okay.
So this was just overall a fantastic ability with so many different use cases for the monk. Dizzying Haze existed all the way through Warlock.
I'm not the IRS, bro.
Though enemies having a chance to hit themselves was removed, before ultimately Dizzying Haze was removed entirely in Legion.
I just think this is the wrong
But again,
answer.
in Mock Classic,
Dude, guard, like when you had a ton of vengeance in Miss Pandaria, you could just have a massive absorb on everyone in your party in dungeons and a decent amount of people in your raid, and it was not a small absorb. Like it scaled off of vengeance, so you could have an absorb that was like more than your entire HP
you'll get
bar.
the chance to try out this ability once again. Finally, for the
And that sounds insane, but honestly, everything in MoP was just so OP that that's not even like crazy. Like, imagine that now. Imagine if you play with a Brewmaster Monk in your keys right now, you would randomly be giving an absorb for over 100% of your HP. It would feel like Oracle, right? And it was really common. And that you're already thinking like, well, that would be super fucking broken, and it would be. But like in Mist, that wasn't even anything because everything was that broken.
other wearers is the Demon Hunter, and for them I want to do a throwback to their release expansion, Legion. For Demon Hunter I'm picking what used to be their artifact weapon ability for Havoc, the Fury of the Illidari.
Nah. That's just this what? Bro, this thing was like ass. And it's still in the game. This wasn't even good.
Class's artifact ability was something pretty amazing back.
I mean, I don't think there's a lot of great answers for this, but like one of them could be like, I don't know if it's actually removed or is just way worse now, but like Inertia was really broken, or like Legion Momentum was really broken. Bloodlet was really broken. Which are now like, they kind of exist in different ways, but not really. Blade Dance Immunity was really broken. This is... Am I crazy? Am I misremembering this? I remember this ability being like so far down in your DPS priority, even in AoE. Maybe I'll let him cook. Let's let him cook. Let him cook.
But Fury of the Illidari definitely stood out. What it did was pretty simple. On a 1-minute cooldown, do a massive amount of AoE damage to all nearby targets. Demon Hunters, especially in Legion, had a very strong AoE damage profile between their artifact ability, Blade Dance and Eye-Beam. And both in Mythic Plus and raid bosses which required AoE, they definitely excelled. And at a 1-minute cooldown, this
not even using it
as though it was
in this
nearly
VOD.
always ready to go whenever you were pulling a lot of enemies. Blizzard did end up removing Fury of the Illidari at the start of BFA, alongside many other Legion artifact powers and abilities, but they did kind of bring it back in Shadowlands with a new ability called Glaive Tempest. However, Glaive Tempest just didn't do anywhere near as much damage.
Dude, I actually think Glaive Tempest, as weak as it is, might actually do more damage than the thing he picked. Or at least, because Glaive Tempest is a third of the cooldown, if you 3 uses of Glaive Tempest is absolutely better than it used to be. Yeah, this is just like completely wrong.
It cost resources and it was target capped, so it was a far cry from how powerful Fury of the Illidari felt to use. Overall, their Legion brought a ton of
that was sick, bro. Holy fuck.
Artifact weapons, and for their opening expansion, the Demon Hunter got a particularly good one. Now we're moving on to the Mailwearer.
I mean, to be fair, there wasn't a lot of great answers for this, but this just definitely was a wrong one.
And the first one up is the Hunter.
Okay, let's what did we have for Hunter again? We had Aspect of the Fox, but I think this answer is like maybe what a lot of people would choose, but I think Aspect of the Fox is basically like super overrated. Like really overrated. Like History of WoW kind of thing. It could be like, yeah, like Mop Stampede maybe. Readiness, yeah, maybe Readiness. Wild Spirits. Ooh, Wild Spirits is not a bad take. Wild Spirits is very insane. At least its original version. I don't know. Let's see what he picks here.
The ability I want to highlight for them is one that actually exists in Cataclysm, which was temporarily removed in Mists of Pandaria before being brought back in Warlords of Draenor and its most powerful form. It's usually the case with Warlords of Draenor that Blizzard were removing abilities or pruning things out of your spellbook, but in this case Hunter's got something back, and that was Aspect of the Fox. So in Cata you may know this as simply allowing you to cast Steady Shot and Cobra Shot while...
I'm not surprised this ended up being the answer. I think this is one of the spells in WoW's history that is massively overrated when anyone talks about it.
Moving. And this was the case in Mists of Pandaria for a bit too, but Blizzard made a change so you can cast these while moving baseline without needing Fox active, and that was when they temporarily removed it. In Warlords of Draenor though, Aspect of the Fox...
Also, there was no reason to remove this spell. This got removed because of one boss.
...was no longer a passive buff as...
Where Hunters also happen to be super OP for doing damage on.
...aspects tend to be, and instead it was redesigned into a cooldown. A seriously powerful cooldown at that. On a 3-minute cooldown when activated, it would allow all raid members within 40 yards to be able to...
Like, just read this. Like, this is not OP. Like, on a 1-minute cooldown, this would be... like, 3 minutes? There wouldn't be even a reason to bring multiple Hunters unless they were already tuned really well, like in the current state of the game. I just think it's like so overrated.
Moving for 6 seconds, and certain boss fights in Warlords of Draenor, such as...
And legit, like this ability on most bosses is like actually, like it doesn't even matter.
Can phase 1 on Mythic, had your whole raid need to move during the same time as a group while still taking tons of damage. So to have 0 downtime on DPS or heals whilst dodging the mechanics was a very big deal on some fights. Perhaps more so than anyone for healers who are typically a little less mobile while pressing their big healing buttons. Aspect of the Fox allowed players to coordinate and overcome mechanics in
Confluence of circumstances causing nerfs, classic, yep.
The way that Blizzard weren't entirely
Unholy Decays and Demo Locks being nerfed because they happened to be a good PI target.
Of Fox casts to overcome difficult
An absolute classic.
Of them. But Aspect of the Fox in this state didn't even last the whole way through the Warlords of Draenor expansion and was removed in patch 6.
Like you know why people think this is so overpowered is because it was used in a raid and then it was removed, so people are just like, yeah, they had to remove it because it was so OP. It was removed right after. It was super good for one boss ever. And then it's just like, well, of course they had to remove it. Like for example, if they left Aspect of the Fox in the game since Warlords of Draenor, you guys would laugh at this answer. At this being like the best ability for Hunters that's existed. Like crazy.
Hellfire Citadel. Nevertheless, for a time, hunters had perhaps their most valuable bit of raid-wide utility ever, and it all happened during Warlords of Draenor. Next up is the Evoker, because we are covering all classes here. Still, as
I don't even know what they could possibly choose for this. Let's see if he gets a good answer. We talked about a bunch of potential ones, but I don't even know what. I mean, it's not a specific talent or a specific thing, but is it just whatever the fuck was doing Flame Shaper Pres Evoker healing in season 1 of this expansion? But I mean, those abilities aren't gone; they're just nerfed. You know what I mean? Like, it was just so OP.
Addition to WoW, they haven't had as many iterations over the years, and haven't had as many chances to just do overpowered things. But I know what remove thing I want to pick from the Evoker here, because it's very much changed how much one of their specs has started to be picked. So back in Dragonflight midway through the expansion, Evoker was given a third spec, Augmentation, or just Aug for short. An Aug is unlike many other specs in the game.
Where's he going with this?
DPS, a tank, or a healer, but it's a support spec that buffs others in their party or raid. And when people got to grips with this new spec and saw what it was capable of doing,
talent,
it was adapted
closest
into
clutch
the
mates.
game very fast, and it was
Ebonmite
soon
isn't
proving
gone.
itself as part of a comp which was clearly head and shoulders above anything else at high level in Mythic Plus. And whilst Aug was also great, it was problematic.
Wait, is he just picking? But okay, but Aug isn't gone. Like, it's really bad right now. But I mean, like, next patch, it could just be good again. You know, just like every other spec.
Overpowered, and when Aug was bad, it was really bad. And it seems as though Blizzard are still to strike a balance where a support spec can feel healthy for the game, especially at higher levels of gameplay. But this brings me to what has been removed from Augmentation.
Okay, yeah, okay.
To see a big drop.
Yeah, so it's not. He's not just picking Aug. That would be a pretty bad answer. What is it?
And that was a targeted change to the spec in patch 11.1 of the War Within, where they can no longer buff tanks.
Okay, so in raids, this doesn't matter, but in dungeons, this is
or healers, meaning
probably what killed them.
Capabilities are on
this actually, there's not a lot of good answers. There's not a lot of like great answers for this, but this is certainly a fine one.
Mythic Plus season or the overall passes from
fine answer.
Heroic. This is
if he just said Aug in general, that would have been like
a complete non-answer. A very big margin. It's the same story on Mythic too, by the way. So it seems as though this change has temporarily pretty much removed Augmentation as a spec from existence, which seems like a rather big thing to have lost out on. You do wonder if they'll wait 12 months and then just rebuff Aug to let them have fun again, or perhaps the support spec is just always going to have its ups and downs, and we'll have to see how Blizzard changes this in the future. The last of the male classes is the Shaman, and for them I want to talk about a pretty big downgrade in the mobility of Elemental.
Oh, pretty big downgrade in the mobility of Elemental. I mean, I just put Ancestral Guidance, because that's like a more recent thing, but I think AG has been like really, really powerful the entire time the game has been out, and just a really underrated, really, really good spell. He's going to talk about moving while casting Lightning Bolt.
But also of restoration too in certain circumstances, and that was their loss of the ability to cast Lightning Bolt whilst moving. So if you played Elemental in Cataclysm...
So, I don't know if there's a lot of great answers for Shaman. I don't know if I really like this one, though, because, like, LA Shaman in the last... You can only talk about LA Shaman here, because this is... I mean, I guess you talk about Resto, but... They have other ways of casting... Like, there are some versions of LA that are, like, hard lockdown and hate movement, but, like, basically ever since they've had that... God, what's that spell where you use Frost Shock, like, 4 times? That, like, always amplifies their movement a lot. Like, I feel like they've had relevant... good specs that are pretty mobile, that are sometimes Ice Fury related, sometimes not. I think that, okay, well, I mean, I know I'm me, so I'm biased, but I think he's wrong and I'm right. I think Ancestral Guidance is, like, way better than this, and it impacts all 3 specs.
You'll know there's a glyph called Unleash Lightning, which simply allows the Lightning Bolt to be cast whilst moving. Of course, this is your main filler spell, and it's great to be able to use this while still moving in all areas of content. In patch 5.3 during Mists of Pandaria, Blizzard changed this glyph and just made Lightning Bolt castable whilst moving baseline as a thing that the Shaman could now do. In fact, this may have been influenced by the fact that another caster, the Warlock, as we've already talked about, at this point in time was able to do that.
It's not a terrible answer though, for what it's worth.
too. So really, what is
Like,
being able to
AG isn't a
cast
slam
one spell
dunk,
in
but I do
comparison
think it's
to
better.
that? Mr. Pandaria was a time of crazy mobility in the game,
Alright,
especially
I'm done with my
for
food, so I'm going to
casters.
skip ahead to the
Lightning
next
Bolt
class.
in the day this was possible without a glyph from patch 5.3. That is sacred
Oh,
players. And
shit.
now we are onto the plate wearers with the Paladin up first. For them, I'm picking a talent.
Okay, he said sacred something, so I know I'm wrong, but I have Ashen Hollow.
Which only
What's he
worked
picking?
this way during the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, and that is Sacred Cleansing. So PvP
Just like a PvP answer. All right, all good. You can just skip this.
and WoW changed a lot from TBC to Wrath of the Lich King, with Blizzard removing a ton of RNG.
Wait, that doesn't
and
even
WoW
sound
changed a
good.
lot.
Your cleanse spell has a 30% chance, so when you dispel someone, there's a 30% chance to increase the target's resistance to disease, magic, and poison by 30% for 10 seconds. It was Omega, Giga, Broken, and Wrath. All right.
From TBC to Wrath of the Lich King, with Blizzard removing a ton of RNG effects from Arena, ranging from environmental hazards, stun resist, spell knockback changes, and loads more. Across the world, from open world to battlegrounds to the arena, PvP interactions were going to be a bit more consistent and expected, rather than getting super unlucky or lucky being the deciding factor in whether you win any given battle. This all sounds great, and though it's going to be leading to a more competitive and healthy PvP scene as a whole. And then Blizzard go and, for some inexplicable reason, add one of the most RNG heavy talents into the game we've ever seen in Sacred Cleansing. This will give your cleanse effect a 30% chance upon dispel to increase the target's chance to resist disease, magic, and poison effects by 30% for 10 seconds. So you could randomly dispel, well, just about anything, and have a chance to make the target have a much higher chance to resist future spells. Imagine removing any of Mage's slow on a warrior, and then they have a 30% extra chance to resist Nova or Deep Freeze. When Sacred Cleansing procced, it could absolutely turn a fight purely on RNG, and this was an expansion where they aimed to remove so much of PvP's randomness. On top of this, the Holy Paladin was already S tier in absolutely everything in Wrath of the Lich King, and were often found in top arena teams and were stacked in raids.
All right. We'll skip through this. W.
Catalyst line and strange talent guy, at least a true hero class Wrath of the Lich King.
Here we go.
It's no exaggeration that the release DK was a true hero class and was just miles ahead of any other class at doing, well, anything to be honest. You could very much DPS as any of the 3 specs, or you could
I will say another mid answer, Hungering Cold or AMZ. Ooh, Hungering Cold. That's a good. What did we choose here? We chose Dark Sim is gone. Thinking about this now, kind of a niche answer, but it did completely break some raid fights and was just overall really cool and really fun. But there's probably something more powerful. I think rezzing your friend as a ghoul is something that some people in chat said. I think that's a crazy answer. That thing was so mid. I think the true answer is probably AMZ, because I think AMZ was literally the best raid cooldown ever in Nathria, and then now it's not nearly as good. But he's going to say some Wrath shit, so...
could tank as any of the 3 if you wanted. People would run 5 DKs through TBC dungeons when they were leveling and just absolutely flatten them. In Arena, people reach Gladiator in blue gear, and others use cast random macros with their abilities to just let fate decide their rotation. So this means there's going to be quite a lot of choice for the most overpowered removed ability. For the Death Knight specifically, just to give you a real idea of how overpowered some of their spells were, I want to do an honourable mention to a glyph. This was Glyph of Death and Decay, which made it so targets inside Death and Decay had a 20% chance to cower in fear for 2 seconds. So in PvP or PvE, you'd pop your Death and Decay down and it could chain proc this fear effect on anyone inside of it, effectively making them be able to...
Yeah, PvP answer, but... PvP answer, but this does sound super fucking OP, though.
not play the game.
This also sounds like something that would be Omega broken in Mythic Plus. Could you imagine, dude? Could you imagine if your D&D in Mythic Plus, if you ran any spec of DK, was just like chain? I mean, it's kind of like Earthquake, right? Where it just like randomly knocks down things. But that would just be so good for stops.
Oh,
it's just honorable, just honorable,
this,
okay.
rather unsurprisingly, was changed very early into Wrath, so the glyph just made Death and Decay do more damage instead. But the pick for the Death Knight is the talent that only made it one major patch before it had to be removed from the game because it was so unreasonably overpowered, and that was Shadow of Death. This was a talent found in the Unholy Tree, which in addition to giving you some bonus stats, made it so when you died, you would resurrect as a ghoul and be able to continue fighting for 45 seconds. And of course this worked in PvE, and it also worked in the arena. The ghoul you resurrected as would have their own action bar,
PvP
with
answer.
abilities
All right,
similar
next.
to 45 seconds from working this way in patch 3. And out of everything they have, at least we have they are in vanilla area. And I think there's plenty of things which would be worthy of choosing here, such as
this is warrior, I believe.
how they are in vanilla, being the best DPS and tank by some margin, from their scaling to the rage resource and everything else that goes into the class. But I've decided what I want to pick is something a little bit different, something which existed for one expansion. This was a Legion artifact trait that Fury Warriors have called Juggernaut.
This isn't... I don't think this is a super bad... I think this is probably a pretty good answer. What did we choose? Old Rallying Cry? This is a pretty good answer.
The Juggernaut trait made it so execute...
The thing is like, there's not even a lot of fights that were defined by this. I don't know. It also still exists. And it's good. I would have picked Gladiator Prot Warrior. That shit was nuts. Dude, so many people said that. And that has to be a PvP answer, because like in PvE, Glad Stance Warrior was so mid. It was like never good. It was fine.
Increase the damage of execute by 5%.
I remember Juggernaut being insane on Argus. Juggernaut was fine in a bunch of different fights. You guys are just thinking of one clip where someone's screaming.
8 seconds, stacking up to 99 times. Now actually reaching the cap of 99 wasn't realistically going to be possible unless you set up a fight specifically.
Yeah, but that clip goes hard. The clip does go hard.
But even hitting stacks which went 30 plus, which was definitely doable, meant that your execute had a 150% damage buff. And this was already a super hard hitting ability. Of course, warriors have always been known for their strong execute phase, but this artifact trait put Fury Warriors on a whole other level. On longer fights where you could have consistent uptime, you'd see Fury rise on the meters, often ending towards the top after they hit really high execute stacks. This was also probably a bit of a design issue for Blizzard moving forwards, as if a boss, for example, did have a long execute phase, this trait will probably make warriors disproportionately good on that specific fight. Either way, when BFA released, the great artifact pruning happened, and every class lost tons of the fun stuff they had had throughout Legion, and Juggernaut was one of those abilities to go. And that, I think, is just about it. What has to be one of the most powerful abilities removed from each of the classes of World of Warcraft.
Okay, so basically the question is, what is the most OP of all of them? And I think the answer is Surrender to Madness or Symbiosis. It's one of those two. Not really sure. They're both good at completely different things. Hard to compare them, but I think Ashen Hollow, he didn't pick it for Paladin, but I think also it would be way up there too. It would be like top 5 in that discussion. It like completely defined the game until it was removed.